can begin. I'm recording the meeting. Welcome everybody. And our agenda for tonight is simple. After we do an opening invocation or prayer, I will do my presentation in a form of discussion. And then I hope it will work. I have not tried it online, but on ground, I tried some games in class, so I hope it will work. But it is related to the content of our discussion. And then we will watch a short video related to the topic, and then we wrap up. With that, I invite everyone to remember that we are in the holy presence of our Creator and in the holy presence of each other, including the dead relatives and people we know. And with that, I will invite Chris to lead us with an opening prayer.
Thanks, Dr. T. And I feel kind of funny doing this with Brother Julio and Brother Ray, so you guys pray for me. Dear Lord and Father of all, thank you for today. Thank you for ways in which you provide for us all. For your protection and love, we thank you. Help us to focus our hearts and minds now on what we're about to learn. Inspire us by your Holy Spirit as we listen and write. Guide us by your eternal light as we discover more about the world around us and each other. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let me share my screen. All right, so let me see. Okay, talking about what we will be covering. The topic for our discussion will be exercising ethical influence. So let me just remind you what is meant by ethical influence. It is about how you ensure people accept and choose to do what you want them without forcing them. So influencing can be made for wrong cause or for a concern and development of an organization, development of followers, so for an ethical cause or end. So we are concerned on how we can influence others for a desirable end, for ethically correct result. Because people do not accept decisions because it is given to them from authority. As a leader, you need to consider some strategies that make followers buy into what you are asking them to do. So that idea, the tactic or the strategies that we use for the right cause, example, development of followers or benefiting an organization, or that ability to modify attitudes and behaviors of followers in order to help them reach their goals. That is what we want to talk about. We are not interested on the negative influence. So influencing must be for the right cause, but it can also be done for an ethical end, for the wrong end. For instance, you can, as a leader, manipulate a system to achieve personal gains. That is influencing. Another wrong influence could be intentionally misleading others, like the conspiracy theory or fake news, or even hiding information can be a tactic to negatively influence followers. Can you think other methods on how influence can be used for a wrong end, for something that is unethical? Just give me some example. You can unmute your speaker.
Well, I have, and it's something that's been sort of troubling me that in Graham, where he talks about the consistent Nazi and them being so completely ingrained in the laws that were out there and actually believing it, and them having a good life because they truly believed in it, but it was for just a horrible cause.
Exactly. That could be a kind of brainwashing or accepting whatever the authority tells us as if it is truth. So those are some extreme examples. Another example could be use of force or threatening a follower that is going to lose his position or will be fired if does not accept what is being asked of them. And you can list many other examples that are unethical concerns in influencing. So let's look at some of the tactics that are used for influencing. And of course, here we are talking about the positive ones. The first one discussed in the textbook by Johnson is framing. Framing is one strategy. What does it mean? In simple words, where you create a mental picture to enable the followers see in a manner that you want them frame the issue in their mind. For example, if you want to sell an idea, a new program to be introduced in your department, you can tie that idea or that program to the mission of the institution, that is helping them see how it is related to the purpose of the organization, or how it will benefit the income of your staff, or how it will enhance the education of students. All these are the kind of tactics that leaders use. They frame in their followers' mind a picture that make the suggestion acceptable. Like we can mention other examples. If you are like thinking in terms of business, you can connect the idea with financial benefit. If you are a politician, to show the interest on how you will be able to defeat your opponents. Or if you are to relate it to the ethics topic, government watch personnel, you would connect it how it enhances or violates ethics. So it depends how the leader frame the message to make the followers accept what they are, what they want them to accept. Another example given in the textbook is about garlic necklace. You know, many people see garlic not only as a medicinal, but also warding off vampires. So they wear garlic necklace either to protect sickness or other ghosts. So Johnson relates this to leadership influencing positively followers, coming up with some moral symbols that you can put in your work environment, workplace. I can mention one example and then you can give me some of the examples. So if I have in my department a statue or a picture of Mother Teresa, definitely it will have some positive influence, some positive moral reminders to the followers, maybe to be kind to one another, to be loving, to help. So can you mention some moral symbols that you can use to influence positively your colleagues or followers? Yes, Julio.
Thank you, Dr. T. For example, in my school, we have on the walls the visions and the purpose of the school. And also we have this in the staff room with the purpose of reminding them which important are our values in our practices, in our learning process.
Thank you. Any other one? Just shout. Sometimes I don't see the symbol, whether you are raising your hand or not.
I think a lot of times, like in different companies and organizations, I think one thing that can be useful is when a company puts its like mission or values, displays them prominently. For example, when you walk into my my company in our office, that one of the very first things you see are our core values on the wall, and they're like painted on there. It's not just, you know, a picture hanging, like they are painted on there. So having something like that very visible reminds us of what we're there to do and how we need to do it.
All right, thank you. So other examples mentioned. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, it's Lowell. I'm just on phone, not on video. With a lot of the member-based organizations I work with, actually, when they have pictures of their members in action up around them, it serves as a reminder of who like staff are doing the work for, and has them, at least from the conversations I've had, you know, keep to a higher ethical standard, because it's right in their face in terms of like, who are we doing all this work for, the mission we're trying to advance.
Perfect. There are so many examples, but still all those symbols, they have some impact. They have some influence. All right, another strategy, compliance gaining. So compliance gaining, referring to the process of influencing followers to take action about what you want them to do. It is the act of intentionally trying to alter behavior and ensuring that they abide with company policy, pursue organizational mission. So many approaches to achieve this: rational persuasion, uprising, inspirational appeals, consultation, collaboration, ingratiation, personal appeals, exchange, coalitional tactics, legitimating tactics, pressure. So these approaches are like a verbal tactics used to produce positive feeling in the follower, and then do what they are expected to do. Some of them, of course, like they are obviously positive, but there are some of them that could be related to hard power instead of the soft power, and they are likely to arouse a negative feeling with the aim of personal gains. So could you be able to mention some examples of the hard or even the soft powers. And you can look at your textbook if it is by you, page 210 to 211. They explain what these different tactics mean. But I'm asking you if you can mention which one appears to you like hard power that arouses negative feeling.
Johnson mentions that legitimating tactics and pressure are two of the hard powers
Correct, that's right.
and definitely lead to negative feelings.
Any other example? Even the exchange approach could be related to kind of the transactional leadership. I will give you this, you give me that. So it can be used in a negative way just to achieve personal goals. So these are all related to compliance gaining. Then the other strategy is communication of expectations. Here we are communicating high expectations, implying the leader's optimistic expectation, and this will improve performance in followers. It has the Pygmalion effect from the Greek mythology. The Prince Pygmalion created a status of a beautiful woman, and he fall in love with her, with the image that he created. There was no any other woman around him who could compete with that woman that he created. He wished it could talk. He wished that it could have life. So he prayed to the goddess Aphrodite, who heard his prayer and gave life to this status, and he named her Galatea. So the idea is his own creation becomes important. So the expectation goes to the level of what he wants to achieve. So in this case, then the communication of expectation is you make the followers feel more than what they really believe they are. Like in the image on your left side, my teacher thinks I can do this. So if the teacher thinks that I can do this, then the expectation is higher and the performance will be better. That is the assumption or the Pygmalion effect. The negative one, golem effect, is when you expect poorly or lowly about the individual. Like when a teacher tells a student, I know you could never win, or a parent telling a child. So the child or the student does not have any motivation to try. After all, he is not capable. So those communication of expectations that leaders use to encourage followers to perform better are examples of strategies influencing followers to perform better. Any ethical implication using the communication of expectations, even if it is the Pygmalion effect, that self-fulfilling prophecy, the positive one. Do you think there is any concern with that?
difficult, to say the least. So I often tell them that they're my favorite class and that they are doing the best out of all of my classes. So I kind of coach myself up to say that they're the best, and then they really started to get a lot better and achieve a lot more. So hopefully I'm not breaking any ethical grounds here, but it feels like it works.
So what would be then the ethical concern here? I'm thinking about these jobs Amazon are offering currently, where the payment appears to be very attractive, and people go into that job assuming that they will benefit. But when you go there, I am told the work is very stressing. You have to function like literally like a machine. So it is very stressing situation. Well, the communication is that you will be paid high. Your income will improve. Even will pay you $5,000 on the spot when you sign in to work for us. You know, those kind of expectation. But at times, when the expectation, this is my feeling, when the expectation is made to be too much to the extent of exploiting the energy of the followers, then it is crossing the ethical boundaries.
I guess there's also a similar example in my line of work where certain institutions would want to pursue on a certain goal, and they kind of develop groupings of these champions who would pursue a certain goal. And what happens is, because you have champions there, they develop trainees from among the teachers, and these teachers would have all the works, and then the champions are just there watching and trying to evaluate their performance. I guess that one is very unfair, and at the same time it doesn't seem to sound like they're champions at all, because the ones doing the work are really those on the ground level. I mean, on the teachers, not on the so-called
management. Yes, exactly. I think that's a good example. Richard, do you want to explain briefly what you put on the chatting?
Yeah, just, when I look at, kind of communicating these high optimistic expectations, in organizational context, so for instance, right now with multiple pandemics happening, this is something, that I experience, in my organization, and also have experienced in adjacent organizations, is that, when leaders, are not really taking into account the realities of the contextual realities that are happening right now, then when you really kind of over communicate like these high expectations or the optimism, I think that you have to be very careful that it isn't shifting into toxic positivity, where you're ignoring actually what's happening, and then you really have significant blind spots to the actual experiences, of your maybe your team, maybe people that you're leading, and it really begins to then make cognitive dissonance, a part of the system, or you can institutionalize cognitive dissonance. So I think that you will really lead into and ethical,
right,
realities.
Good, thank you. But we are saying communication of expectation is a good strategy, but we have to be truthful. We have to make sure whatever we are trying to do or communicate is for the benefit of the organization, not for our own fame as leaders. All right, so let's see the other strategy, argumentation. Here, leaders building a strong case for themselves while refuting the arguments of those who take alternative position. So as a leader, when you come with evidence, with statistics, with facts. Like yesterday, President Biden was in Minnesota, and he was talking of a lot of facts or statistics, at least, which was convincing when you listen to what he was trying to communicate. So when we come up with such evidence, we can be in a better position to influence our followers. But there is a consideration we have to make so that we don't exaggerate or we don't use it for personal advantage. Always ethically appropriate use. So if someone could read for us, a volunteer, from your textbook, page 217, the last paragraph is a good consideration that we should make sure that we are ethically appropriate and when it should be avoided and to what extent it should be used. And the paragraph begins with managing interpersonal relations. Anyone? Yes,
I can
please. Okay, thanks.
Managing interpersonal relations. Prevent arguments from deteriorating into verbal aggression. If others aren't as skilled in argument as you, don't humiliate them by showing off your argumentation skills. Save your best efforts for those times you are matched with someone of equal ability. Empathize equality and what you have in common. Demonstrate that you are interested in their viewpoints. Let other participants finish their thoughts instead of an argumentative response to those who go on the verbal attack against you. 1, refute the verbally aggressive claim underlying a personal attack. 2, point out the differences between argument and verbal attack and suggest that the aggressor get back to the argument. 3, do not reciprocate the attack. 4, appeal to reason by pointing out personal attacks are not rational and that the discussion should stay on topic. 5, threaten to leave if the attacks don't cease and carry through on your threat if necessary.
Thank you very much. And I think that is stated very well. We have to consider how to use argumentation, but still it remains to be an important strategy in influencing. The last one is negotiation, like what we do between the employees and the union representatives. That's a good example of negotiation in influencing. So this strategy used to reaching a settlement that satisfies both sides. It could be the leaders or the management and the followers or employees. The ethical concerns are in relation to the choices of tactics, the distribution of benefits, and the impact of the settlement on those who are not in the bargaining table. And there are some considerations that we need to make during negotiations, because our aim is we want to do the right thing. We want to be moral. That is the aim. So some consideration, and there are many examples or considerations given by Johnson on page 220. There is a list of considerations at the top of the page. They are stated out. Like you can consider as you make this negotiation, will you feel comfortable with your decision if your family members or if your decision is on the papers the following day? Those kind of questions, you can look at them and maybe you can mention one or two of those principles or considerations that you need to put in mind as you are involved in negotiation. Page 220, anyone that comes to mind from here?
sorry, Dr. T, could you repeat your question?
Yes, my question is, if you look the textbook on page 220, at the top of the page, by David Lux and James Sebnus, these are suggestions that we need to consider as we get into the negotiation table. And the reason is we want to do the right thing. We are not just about winning, succeeding with our agenda, but we want to do the right thing. So these principles stated out here are some of the principles that leaders need to keep in mind as they are negotiating. So if you look at those, I don't know which one makes more sense to you from what is listed there.
There's one that that kind of jumps out to me, and I might not be applying this correctly, but I have a team of analysts, and we develop our methodologies when we're approaching a project, but we all develop our methodologies differently. And I think what this is trying to say is that in order for sort of that differentiated approach, that difference in methodology, it's more desirable because they're using their voice, they're using their thought process, and then, you know, they're bringing the rest of us in their methodology to, you know, to move the project forward. I'm not sure if I'm applying that correctly, but that is what kind of jumps out at me.
Okay.
In my experience, one of the most difficult things that I have to deal with negotiation is when you have groups that are liars and they deceive people. And sometimes you need to have, instead of negotiation, you need to really have a sort of individual talks with these people. And then once you learn and discover where they're coming from, then you go back to the drawing board and then negotiate again and in a larger scale.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, so I think negotiation is a good strategy for influencing people, but still we can go wrong if we use it for the wrong purpose, for the wrong intention. That is what we are trying to say. So all these examples that we saw, argumentation, communication of expectations, compliance gaining, and framing, all these are strategies for influencing followers to buy the idea that we want them to put in practice. And in most cases, they are good strategies. They can be used positively. But we also need to flip the coin and see the other side of it. Okay, these are strategies for influencing. How about for resisting influence? There is a need to resist influence. And that's what we are going to see. And let me just stop here. We will come back to this video at the end. I want to go to the next kind of presentation I have. We will play, before I share it, let me first open here. Let me see if this will work. Okay, let me see. No, it's refusing. Wait, let me try one more time.
You got this, Dr. T. We believe in you.
Wait, yeah, it is just that they are making, it is Kahoot, and Kahoot used to be free, but this time they are asking me to pay. I don't know why. Let me see. Go this way. If not, there is no problem. We'll just okay. No, it's not working. Okay. All right. So let me just read the questions and we can just talk about them. And then at the end, we will watch the video and we will conclude. So now what we are going to talk in a form of questions or asking questions and multiple choices is about resisting influence, because we don't have to be influenced by everything that comes across our way. There are certain strategies that we need to put in place to resist influence. Okay, so let me start with the first question. As we go along, I think it will be more clearer. As a leader, and this is a question, as a leader, you should not only know how to ethically influence others, but also resist some influence. Is that true statement or wrong? Just say.
True.
Hello? Yes, that is true. We have to resist influence because it is an obvious question, kind of warm up. We need to guard ourselves from predators, lots of information that bombards us via the internet, news, emails, telemarketers, advertisement. So there are so many information, and we have to resist some influence if we see them to be unethical. The second question is a blank space. Blank space is the belief that while others can be fooled by persuaders, we are immune to such manipulation. So the question is, blank space is the belief that while others can be fooled by persuaders, we are immune. When you believe that, you are immune to such manipulation. What is it called? Negative influence, B, resistance, C, illusion of invulnerability, D, mental shortcut. What do you think the correct answer is? A, negative influence, B, resistance, C, illusion of invulnerability, D, mental
C.
shortcut. Yes, the answer is C. Yes. So illusion of invulnerability is when you believe that you cannot be fooled by persuaders. But everyone is vulnerable to be misled, cheated, and manipulated. We all have moments when we feel strong or weak. Our response to, for example, our responses to telephone calls or text messages are different depending the time of the day or on the level of our energy. Okay, let me go to the third question. Okay. One of the following does not create a concern for an ethical influence, immoral influence. One of the following does not create a concern for an ethical or immoral influence. A, accepting a free sample at the store. B, free donation from a controversial donor. C, testing free food sample at Costco store. D, contributing to help disaster victims in your city. So I will
If it's
repeat.
samples at Costco, I'm in big trouble.
Okay, so the choices are A, accepting a free sample at a store. B, free donation or accepting free donation from a controversial donor. C, testing free food sample at Costco store. D, contributing to help disaster victims in your city. So which one does not create a concern for unethical influence?
Wow.
I don't understand the difference between A and C, frankly. Like a free sample, one store, or like free
Okay.
food sample at Costco. I don't
Yeah,
understand the difference.
so you can eliminate those. Those are
Okay.
the same. That
Look at these test taking strategies, everybody. So I'm gonna go with B.
D is a good, the correct answer, because accepting free food, there must be some expectations behind it, or even donation from a controversial donor. It is assumed that helping disaster victims such as hurricane, flooding, wildfire, or hail happening in your neighboring city are genuine situations that request contributions. So those could be a good cause to participate or to assist. But there is something behind the free sample or donation or from controversial people, or even testing free food from some stores like Costco.
The question.
Yes.
And so I don't know if it's me, but I think that I would say, especially, in the years from, I would say from the years 2008 to now, I just don't, I think that what we're discussing is a lot more complex. And I think you alluded earlier to, like, even the concept of fake news, and, what you may define as controversial would be normal, for one. So I don't think that, even like these, they're not universal questions, because based on context, and based on who is answering the question, there would, be different answers. And I would say from 2008 to now, that the whole aspect of what's ethical in leadership has been totally turned upside down. And so, but I would say the concepts that are being taught in some ways are not taking that into consideration. And so, I mean, that just looking at the trials, from, last week. So, you have a Republican leader in Florida, Matt Gaetz, saying, hey, Kyle Rittenhouse would be a good congressional intern. And so if you consider congressional interns as leaders, then, well, what are the qualifications, for that? This is a 17-year-old kid that carried an AR-15, rifle across state lines, shot 3 people, was exonerated, in a court. And so is now being, showcased, through media, which is, highly attractive to millennials, highly attractive to Generation Z, or the leaders of today and tomorrow. So I don't see those kind of examples like in our text. And so I don't know how, it's like I'm an older dude, I'm in the 40 range, right? So, I mean, I can read the text and say, hey, yeah, that's correct for the Generation Xer that I am, but that doesn't necessarily prepare me or bridge me for leadership, in the 21st century. So I can guess the correct answer, yet when I'm actually putting into practice, I'm gonna be hitting some roadblocks.
I agree with you, Richard. It all depends, but I think what we are trying to do here is to inform the leader to be ethical as much as possible. I'm sure.
So that's what I was going to say. I think that's the difference, because Richard, you're 100% correct. The ideal of leadership has definitely shifted from when I was a young woman, and I think it in Graham, and I think that's why I spent so much time trying to figure out this consistent Nazi idea, because I think the fake news and elevating somebody like Rittenhouse, what's missing is sort of that moral element. They have this identity, they have this obedience, they have this ideology that they believe in, but what's missing is when their actions are not for the good of the majority. And there's that morality piece or that ethical piece that is questionable. And maybe I'm off base, but I completely understand what you're saying. And I think the difference is looking at leadership without morality, without ethics, you will have these figures that you've just described.
Exactly.
I think part of the challenge is that those leaders don't look at themselves as leaders without morality. I think it's just that we are an ever more divided nation society world where there isn't a singular set of ethics and morality that our leaders are adhering to, right? I mean, when you can't agree to what does it mean for there to be what you want to teach your children in terms of them to be good people, when that is something that is subjective and there isn't some base objective agreement to that, I mean, then, we can look, whoever the we is at one side, the other side can look at us, and both sides say to each other, you're not ethical. And that, I would agree. I mean, I think I'm past years. I think that's an ever more escalating challenge.
Well,
And
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, well, I think that, they're just in terms of resources that, there is there are organizational case. I'm just speaking in North American context, that there's organizational case and there are ethical and moral rules that are generated in each case. And so the leaders in those different environments believe that they're being ethical and moral, wholeheartedly. So I can say the Republican Party, when they have gotten together and they've decided that they're not going to follow through on said acts, they are in complete unity. And that's then lifted up as ethical, and moral for what they're trying to, reinforce with the outcomes that they're trying to generate. And it will be the same, for the Democratic Party, but and this is just politically speaking, there's, a little more difference, but each, kind of faction, has their own set of ethics and what they believe is moral, and they're not, and they're not universal. And so,
you see that though with different, like in different countries, like, I think.
Well, that's why I said I'm speaking in North America.
Yeah.
And then the other thing.
Go ahead, Richard, keep going.
Yeah, just the last thing I'll say is like the other thing that I'm just moving from that the book and the video elicited, is that they're still positioned in the golden rule. And the golden rule is self-centric, treat others like like I want to be treated, but I am the person. So I'm holding all the power and I'm making defining rules, and then we've already moved. So the ethical standard is the platinum rule, which is other-centric. And so you got to discover, about self and others to then be more holistic ethically, because you have more of a relationship, to build that. So I'm just noting that, and I'll be writing about it, in kind of the strategies. But I mean, that's one of the things where, I'm just centering that experience, like, hey, that was effective, for monocultural situations, and we are in a global community.
Okay, Destiny.
Yeah, they're done.
I was just thinking about, you were talking about, like you said, Kyle Rittenhouse would be a great congressional intern, and like makes a great congressional intern, and why does he qualify? I kind of think about, that he's being lifted up, but I think about like the role of followers in this, and I think to myself, when I hear Kyle Rittenhouse will be a great congressional intern, no way, shape, or form do I think that kid should get an opportunity like that. So I also have to, I will make the choice not to follow. So
Exactly.
I think we have to think about, there are going to be, there are people that are going to lift him up and follow, but then there are going to be a lot of people that don't.
Exactly. So
So
just to give,
think about followers in this too,
thank you for that,
and the power in the
Destiny.
not following.
So just to give one simple example, if my party member is lying and I am rewarding that person as if they have done something moral to support the party they have lied, and they are being rewarded, this shows that we have to discuss ethics. We have a lot of ethical concerns, and that's what we are trying to remind ourselves and others by bringing all this into the discussion. Of course, there are many people who are unethical, who take killing or lying to be a heroic act, just as Christy mentioned about the faithful Nazi. So that is why we need to discuss. We are just trying to bring into consciousness the common good for all. So let's just proceed with the questions because of time. The next question I have, commitment and consistent behavior can be opportunities for unethical predators in the following ways. A, making public statement such as pledging. B, when your name is listed among organizational donors. C, fraternity hazing rituals. D, all of the above. Commitment and consistent behavior can be opportunities for unethical or immoral predators in the following ways.
It's all of the above.
It is all of the above. And I think the message is that commitment and consistent can be opportunities for people who want to mislead you because you have made a public pledge, because your name is published as a donor in the organization, or because you take an oath among your fraternity or age mates, you make that consistent commitment. But when you see that there are unethical issues happening, you have to take courage to break from this consistency or from those commitment. Just the example we were talking about, because you belong to a certain party, you have to make the immoral decision in order to please some people or your party members. All right, so the next question is, which of the following strategies is most effective for resisting unethical influence? Most effective for resisting unethical influence. A, participation in a project proposed by fellow church members. B, asking yourself if you like the person proposing or the proposed cause. C, purchasing products advertised by your favorite actor. D, buying a product purchased by your neighbors and friends? Which strategy is most effective for resisting unethical or immoral influence?
Can you read
Participate.
the first one again? Because that one is the one that seems, if you're participating with other people in with a like mind, I think that's
Okay.
where I got stopped.
Okay, so the first one, A, participation in a project proposed by fellow church members. B, asking yourself if you like the person proposing or the proposed cause. C, purchasing products advertised by your favorite actors. And D, buying a product purchased by your neighbors and friends.
That's a hard one.
So I think the suggestion is,
Because you don't have to, I think sometimes if removing, like when I'm thinking about, deciding whether or not I like the person who's proposing whatever, frankly, I think if you ask yourself that question and remove the emotion out of it, like or don't like, you end up with the logic and the reason and the rationale piece. So you're not
exactly,
motivated by emotion. You're
right,
if whether you like that person or not, if it's the right thing, it's the right thing.
exactly. So
Yeah.
that is the correct answer, because you need to ask yourself, am I interested in what is being proposed, or the person proposing it because he's my friend, because looks beautiful or handsome? So you really need to ask whether the cause is a right cause. Okay.
That's not what companies measure though. And so I'm just saying neighbors and friends because that's what net promoter scores measure.
And
So-
that's what we are trying to avoid, because they are our friends, because they are our neighbors, or because they are our party members. We don't have to follow them. We really need to evaluate the situation on our own.
Man, that runs kind of contrary to, and it runs contrary. I understand that it's ethics, but it runs contrary to actual organizational practice.
Exactly. Most organization, and I think this is the challenge when we really take a stand against our organization, our leaders. If it is immoral, that calls for courage. The last question, and then we'll watch the video. Which of the following behavior minimizes unethical or immoral concern? Which one minimizes? A, when a company informs its customers about scarcity or sale of its product. B, negotiations, meaning back and forth communication you make with your potential vendor. C, obeying your authority. D, social proof, and social proof means copying actions and behaviors of others. So
what was C? What was C?
C was obeying your authority. B was negotiations, meaning back and forth communication you make with your potential vendor. A, when a company informs its customers about the scarcity or sale of its product. And D was social proof, copying actions and behaviors of others. Which one minimizes immoral or unethical concern? This should be easy.
I would go with A because I feel like it's transparency.
Well, when your companies inform its customers, oh, there is a sale, there is scarcity in this product, come buy, it's Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
Oh, Okay, well, that's marketing and
Yeah.
advertising. That's different.
Okay.
I was coming from the place of like, hey, consumers, yep, we recognize there's scarcity on products and like, here's what you're getting when you purchase our product, da 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 da.
Okay. How about C, when you are negotiating with back and forth with the potential vendor?
I think there's all kinds of room for unethical
Mm-hmm.
opportunity if you're back and forth. Plenty of opportunity to try to influence without good intention.
Or to avoid the negative influence, you can discover if it is a new product you want to purchase, you bring it to the meeting, you call them another time, you ask them to demonstrate it. In that process, you are likely to minimize negative influence. But looking at D, social proof, because others are buying it or your neighbors, that's still very poor strategy. And even obeying your authority can mislead you, like leaders. And
So
even,
C is assuming you've done your due diligence within that negotiation process.
yes, the negotiation
Okay.
process, that is the best. Okay, so let's watch the video. I will just pull it up here. Hold on, I will. Let me see, make sure that I share it first. So as you watch the video, I want. Can you hear the video though? Hello. Are you able to hear the video?
Push play.
Let me just try it. Can you hear it? Not yet. Okay, hold on. Let me see here before I share. Okay, now you will hear it. Okay, so as you watch the video, I want us to pay attention to the strategies used to influence others, and then the recommendations made to avoid being influenced by those strategies. Like you want to make sure you protect your students, your children, your colleagues. So there are some recommendations provided, but at the beginning, there are some strategies discussed on how we can be negatively influenced. So I will play it for 1 second and then you will tell me. Can you hear it? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, here you go.
Have a great self-perception.
Yeah, basically I was a poet and I was gonna be an English professor, but I was deceptively recruited at college by 3 women who flirted with me, and I thought they were interested, but they were recruiters for a cult. And I dropped out of college, quit my job, donated my bank account, felt my family was satanic, even though I didn't believe in Satan just a few weeks previously. Came to believe Moon was the Messiah, and I was given a whole new false identity for 2.5 years until I fell asleep at the wheel of a van, had a very bad van crash, and then my family found me and deprogrammed me. And at the point that I woke up and understood brainwashing, it was going on in the Moonies, I've been totally passionate about wanting to learn everything I could about the psychology of influence and help as many people as I can to understand this phenomenon. And today people say, oh, you don't hear about cults anymore. Well, you hear about them every day, whether it's Scientology or the Jehovah's Witnesses or ISIS, because they function as destructive cult leaders.
You just mentioned ISIS, so you see ISIS as a destructive cult.
Absolutely, they control people's behavior. They control their information, their thinking, their emotions. They create a new false identity out of child parts, essentially, and they make them into weapons and terrorists, unfortunately.
Can you tell a little bit about the steps? How many hours, how many days it's you are needing to bring somebody in this way in?
So it really becomes an issue of evaluating individual cases, because people are going in and out of vulnerable moments in their life anyway. So death of a loved one, illness, graduation, losing a job, moving to a new city, state, or country are all situational vulnerabilities that cults like to prey on people during those moments. Of course, with the refugee crisis, people are especially susceptible to some authoritative message that speaks to their needs, their deepest needs of self-worth, of meaning making, of community building, of hope for the future. And if there's no hope immediately in their temporal future, the cults like ISIS sell paradise. So to answer your question, recruitment can be as fast as within a few hours if someone is in a frame of mind of more receptivity or susceptibility. So for example, in my work of the last 4 decades, I've met many people, work with many people to help them come out, where I ask them what was going on just before this group entered your life. And if they say, oh, I was praying that God should show me what to do with my life, and then knock, knock, someone says, can we share the Bible with you? They think it's an answer to their prayer. So they're going to be much more receptive to somebody saying, we're here to help you find your destiny. God has sent us here right now to you.
Just recently I heard a story of a very well-educated man having paid 10,000 euros. You have to be in a good position in Syria. Right. If you have 10,000 euro to come to Europe, first boat collapsed relatively close to the coast. One day, one night to go back to the coast, going to the next boat, coming to Germany, and friends of mine helped him. And then in Cologne, there is a very strong Salafist fundamentalistic Islam scene.
Right.
They wanted to tell him Germans are bad and so on. Right. And then he said, no, I know some very nice Germans. I will not come back to the mosque.
Right.
So that is one way of protect such people, to have good contact with such kind of people. But what other things we can do in this situation are so many people are coming, and I do not think you have a perfect solution, but what are your ideas when you are hearing?
The point is that people need to be encouraged to understand the continuum, and there's an influence continuum of healthy, ethical influence and unethical influence. And I have a model called the BITE model that can lay out specific behaviors for people to understand that if someone is telling you you can't talk to ex-members or critics, they're trying to exercise information control. Or if a group is telling you that if you question the leader or the group, evil things will happen, that's phobia indoctrination. That's a form of emotional mind control techniques. So I've laid out a model that everyone needs to be educated with. And in particular, I think there can be educational programs for refugees specifically, but the public needs to be educated as well to understand the difference.
What is your recommendation to families to health professionals who are working with such kind of people, what should they know and in which way to pay them, to which way to join them, and what you recommend and what you rather say better not to.
We need to have a way to help families and friends who are watching a loved one being radicalized to do something that's legal other than call the authorities and have their loved one arrested. They're the early warning sign that there's something wrong. So there are specific techniques and strategies that families should be employing to help their loved one. We need to train people who are in law enforcement, for example, to understand mind control so that they're not just reinforcing the cult identity that wants to resist and rebel, but how to access the authentic self, to encourage the person back to memories of being a normal human being versus the cult identity. We need to use former members of terrorist groups who are in prisons right now to speak out. We should be doing a counter education program, and we need a program for deprogramming active radicals.
Okay. So I think the example was, of course, about radically influencing people to join cult or certain religious group. It is just one example. I'm sorry, it was an extreme example, but it talks about influencing is one strategy. So what did you hear or what did you get from the video on how they influence others? What strategies are used?
Information control was one of them, where you can't talk to anyone else that disagrees with you.
Correct. Any other thing that you heard?
It's interesting to think about trying to incite phobias. I always thought of phobias as something that like are part of you, but that you can in some way affect phobias and cause them in people as another form of control is interesting.
Correct. Phobia indoctrination.
I think recognizing also the frame of mind that someone is in at the time or the moment at which they're influenced is huge.
Correct. Like we get some either text messages or emails, even phone calls at night, and those are they are strategically targeting us when our mind is in a slow level of functioning. We can easily be manipulated. So those are also similar examples. Anything else?
I just put the bike model in chat. So from the freedom of mind, if that's the person. But yeah, it lists off multiple behaviors behind behavior, information, thought, emotional control. So those examples. I'll just say the other thing is that, you know, the person communicating had the power to define the group. And so there's a portion of, there's power being the person defining others as a cult, because I would have, I try to work from the both end, because if I was inside ISIS, I don't know as a practitioner or a participant that I would define my movement or my experience as a cult. And so I think it's trying to be open to say, okay, what are the experiences that are leading me to this situation? And even as a part of that situation, can I identify some of these behaviors that are listed in the bite model so I can then deduce for myself if I'm, you know, being brainwashed. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, but, you know, to point out, to say ISIS or say Jehovah's Witnesses and the movement as a cult, you know, those persons could also be communicating different denominations and saying, hey, well, what is your measuring, you know, set of measuring, you know, factors, you know, that actually fulfill the definition of, you know, a cult. So it could be helpful to have a definition, you know, of here are the characteristics, you know, that I'm utilizing to define said entity as a cult. And now here let me provide this information.
Correct. But I think I appreciate you mentioning about the aspect of power. I think that is an important element in influencing. What else? Anything else from the video?
When he mentioned about education as a tool to counter this one, what came to my mind was the relationship of an adult to a child. Like, for example, when a child has a meltdown, and we as an adult have that extrinsic capacity to control what is the emotional and mind experience of the child. And I go back to that because that's very basic in education. The way we explain things to children, the way we explain to our students. When you come to your classroom and you torture your student, I don't think you are an educator, because you are supposed to build their lives.
Yeah, can I just offer an adjacent view to what you just commented on? And so, because I would say, well, there's the reality around what's being communicated around critical race theory right now. And then, there are daily videos that I see educators, or I see school police officers violating, students, constantly. And so, and not only that, physically, but then, with sexual abuse, of educators and those different type of things. So I think that there's a lot that goes into it. There's a complexity, of, and that's why I'm asking this question, are we at a time that everything is ethical because these behaviors are continually happening?
Hi, Richard, I think you've brought up something really interesting, and I think he kind of called that out in the video, because he said that you need to recognize radicalization. You need to train public servants, right? And these are the people that you're speaking of right now. These are the people that are trusted, that are hurting people, our people, your people. Using former members is a source of power to sort of change that dynamic, and that to deprogram. So that's what I'm thinking.
I think that's, exactly that's correct in terms of being able to name that. So I was just typing back like, okay, well, is radicalization normal? And so, looking at the impact of, COVID, right now, and looking at people's behaviors, and I would say in North American context, when, people, are going to state capitals, the veracity of, do I mask or do I not mask, and things that are happening on airplanes. And so all of this stuff is normed. And so I think some of the things, and so it's kind of like, well, I have the power to identify ISIS as a cult, but, I would say, am I operating in a cult? Could North American context, be a cult, on a macro level? Because there's so much radicalization, that's happening, and that's being demonstrated by everyday people all the time.
All right. So besides all this, I think flattering was also mentioned as another strategy, but I want us to go to the recommendations that they made in that video. Anything that you could mention from what you heard?
Can I ask a quick question? Did you say flattering?
Yes, he mentioned about flattering as a strategy of influencing. They make you feel good and accept what they want you to accept. That is flattering. Like he mentioned
by those three women initially, that's what drew him into the cult.
Yes.
Yeah, well, and so I mean, and I don't know if it's flattery, but I think specifically the tool that the former president was utilizing, that, I'm the best at everything, America is the best at everything, people who are different are the worst at everything. And so I don't know if that falls under the category of flattery, but I'm trying to, I mean, I think that it's pretty close,
It's
you know,
narcissism.
or it's a tactic.
Okay,
It's a manipulation tactic.
right. I think it's closer
Or
to
could it,
manipulation.
I think if that's the author, if that's the person in the video is the author, if I looked up the right person, the person, he wrote a book called The Cult of Trump. And so that's, so that, yeah, that's on the market right now.
Okay, so any recommendations that was made?
I think I probably jumped the gun a little bit because I think part of his recommendations were to train public servants to recognize and understand, to recognize radicalization and be able to deal with it better than some of the stories that we see today. Using former members from the cult to talk about their experiences, much like he was doing in this video. And then, you know, some method of deprogramming. So.
I think you summarized it well, Chris. He also talks about to encourage understanding of what is ethical and what is unethical influence. So underlining point was education. All right. Anything else before we wrap up? A comment, question?
This was good. I miss you guys. I can't wait until next July.
I know. I feel like we're about to wrap up our 4th class, but like July's not that far away. I don't know. Is this going to be the fastest 3 years of our lives, Dr. T?
It will come soon. You will just find yourself soon in July and 3rd year talking about proposal and dissertation. The fun part of the program.
Terrifying.
All right. No, it is fun. All right, then. Thank you so much for attending this meeting and for all your participation. I appreciate that. Have a good night.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.